So in the last part, we've been talking about the Nick Cohen piece in The Observer about Suella Braverman. And I had been updating on the contents of the ruling by the election commissioner, Richard Morey, who banned Lutfur Rahman for 5 years from public office. And I was saying that Lutfur Rahman was ungrateful to a point he possibly never understood and cannot understand even now. Ungrateful to me, not just individually as a person, but as the source of so much vindicated advice that would have saved him from the disgraceful ouster from office and from the damage that he has done to the community and to the cause of democracy and accountability and opposition to racism. And I was saying how I became involved in gathering evidence and gathering sources of evidence, printed materials, and how I had been caused over the 5 decades to transport lorry loads, van loads of magazines, newspapers across East London. And I think that on average, I said, I've had to do that every 18 months or so on average. Now, I was also saying that the reason I had to get physical access to and physical possession of newspapers and magazines is to do with the racism that exists. I didn't come to the racism part, but I said that the available avenues and forums and places that could have these same or similar numbers of magazines and materials was limited or non-existent, even after counting the so-called restricted clubs, membership clubs. So that means that I created a unique collection. You can call it library, and you can call it archives, depending on the state of access that you need and you exercise. One of the criminals involved in the crimes against the Three Cats house in July and October 2012 asked me a question saying, what library? When I said that my libraries have been affected, this criminal, this idiot said, what library? And the idiot's name is Aziz Chowdhury. This criminal knew what I was referring to. So the reason why he asked me that question, I shall go into the answer in detail, maybe probably another edition, but this is a beginning of the examination of the evidence of the crimes that he committed along with 2 or 3 others. And the crimes affected the libraries. The crimes affected the manuscripts. The crimes affected the newspapers, the magazines, and other storage devices and the collections, maybe 2 dozen computers that I had over the years, various models and various shapes and various kind of ages of computers. The reason why they had to be continued to be carried as part of the essential central kind of inventory, if you like, and the contents was because they contained digital data in their most of their CPUs or hard disks or whatever they had, because there are various models of the computers. Now, the information that I'm sharing on these recorded kind of speeches and seminars and talks and commentaries is based on the work that I have been doing and I do continuously about data, about information, about the meaning of things, and about the connections of various events. So these are for the benefit of me as the person who committed to myself to tell the truth, and also to the world that is in need of truth. So therefore, the diagnosis of the media is dating back over decades, and it is brought up to date every day, every time, every edition. So, for example, today it's not just Suella Braverman, but also this one, Martin Amis. Now, he has featured in a perverse, typically racistly perverse way, as one of the racist sources of wisdom. They think that he's a wise person. I have no idea why they think he's a wise person, but that is what his treatment has been. So this wise racist has done severe damage to the level of understanding of ordinary people who are kind of gullibles and brainwashable about their world, about their society, about the faiths, and about the races of people and backgrounds. Instead of serving the universal cause of enlightenment and knowledge and education, this criminal has been spouting racist hatred and ignorance. Just like Jim Davidson. Now, Davidson and him, Martin Amis that is, are different, because even the racists who give him space in their sports, even the racists consider Jim Davidson to be of a different caliber and level than Martin Amis. And Martin Amis, not only because of his kind of father having been a quote writer, Martin Amis himself has confessed to many wrongs in his family, etc., etc. But the fact that his father was, quote, a writer, and he's a, quote, writer, gives these organs and platforms, these Telegraph and Telegraph, the pretext to indulge their propensities and to treat him as a kind of sanctified source of wisdom. And I have now studied all of these very unwise people, very ignorant people. And that's what I've been doing. That's what I do. And the diagnosis of the media is continuing the quest to take apart the myths of these newspapers and the myths associated with the newspapers around the superiority of races, superiority of the colonizers, and the superiority of the particular ethnic groups or whatever. So what I've been doing, what I do is do deeper and real work to show that all ethnic and racial and other defined targets of violence and violation of rights are entitled to justice and a say. And the world needs to be liberated from the rule by liars and deniers and ingrates of all descriptions of all ethnicities and all genders and orientations. Now, Suella Braverman has been festering in a career that has been sponsored by the racists, and she has ingratiated herself increasingly to the racists to a point where it is impossible to hear anything of her identity from her mouth. Just as Trevor Terrible P-Lips has become on a longer scale of time and engagements. Trevor Terrible P-Lips also exploited the insecurity felt by the majority of people coming from the kind of background that he thinks he came from, but he escaped, from the Caribbean. And there is this insecurity among many of these people who associate any mental slave who has been given a spot by the racists politically and organizationally controlling, and therefore the racist masters and mistresses. Any spot given to the likes of Trevor Terrible P-Lips is treated by the majority of the audience in the particular background as if it is an achievement. It is not, of course, at all anything like that. It is the opposite. It is a defeat for the image of the people. It's a defeat of the inherent rights of the people whose existence and identity he appropriates or misappropriates and misrepresents. So, for example, when the comedian Henry started off on television joking absolutely in a racist way that a white comedian would. Lenny Henry from Birmingham, I'm talking about, he started off by making jokes, racist jokes against African people or African stereotypes. And his whole series of acts was in fact based entirely on anti-African hate characters. And yet he has been given this whatever, gong or whatever, in recognition of what? And there is no real independent analysis anywhere among the Caribbean or African people in this country of the grave disservice that the likes of Lenny Henry and Trevor Terrible P-Lips have been doing. There are tinkering opposition, tinkering comments, but no serious evidential factual analysis. And this applies to the behavior of the outfit called Operation Black Votes. I mean, look at this operation. It's not a campaign. Operation is not a campaigning word. It's not a liberating word. It's a subservient word. It's a word that is to be found in the vocabulary of slaves, mental slaves, and operatives. Sinister operatives are underhand Whoever gave the outfit the name could not have been mentally in a state of independence from the racists and the others that they serve with this outfit. So Operation Black Votes, it's a giveaway name. It's trading in the use or abuse or exploitation of the votes of black people. It's not anti-racist. It doesn't say operation against racism or operation to end racism in elections or whatever. It says Operation Black Votes. So all these years that this operation has been operating, it hasn't produced any impact against racism, let alone against criminality, let alone against corruption by the elected black candidates. Now, if the African people were the only black people, then what on earth was Operation Black Votes doing, getting involved in endorsing Lutfer Rahman, who is not African? Answer this. And I'm asking whoever is sympathetic to or is aware of or is associated with this Operation Black Votes to answer this question.